Hello, Symposiast. I'm Dr. Angela Puca, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. Today we talk about Giuliano Kremmerz and Italian Hermeticism. You might or might not be familiar with this, but Italian Hermeticism played a crucial role in the 19th century in the transmission and re-elaboration of Hermetic thought into our contemporary esoteric milieu. And as we will see, Giuliano Kremmerz was also a Neapolitan. But what can I say? Maybe the theory on the water is somewhat founded, and I should start selling Neapolitan water as magical water. Anyway, jokes aside, let's crack on with our discussion and introduce to you Giuliano Kremmerz. Giuliano Kremmerz, born Ciro Farmisano in 1861 in the town of Portici, which is near Napoli or Naples for the Anglophones in Italy, remains one of the most enigmatic and influential figures in Italian esotericism. His work and legacy are intimately tied to the revival of Hermetic thought in Italy during the late 19th century and early 20th centuries. Kremmerz's life exemplifies a synthesis of traditional Hermetic principles with the emerging interest in esotericism as a modern spiritual and scientific discipline. His contributions to Italian Hermeticism are often viewed through the lens of his writings. His establishment of the Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam, or Therapeutic and Magical Brotherhood or Fraternity of Myriam, and his controversial reception within esoteric circles. Yet, a deeper exploration of his life and work reveals his attempts to bridge ancient wisdom with contemporary concerns, particularly in the realm of healing and practical spirituality. Born into a region rich in Hermetic heritage, Kremmerz's intellectual formation was deeply influenced by Neapolitan cultural traditions. Naples had long been a hub for Hermetic thought, particularly during the Renaissance, when figures such as Giordano Bruno and Tommaso Campanella, as well as Giovan Battista della Porta, brought a distinctive Italian flavor to esoteric philosophy. Scholars have noted that this intellectual milieu provided fertile ground for Kremmerz's later interests. Kremmerz was introduced to esotericism at a young age through the study of astrology, alchemy, and the mystical writings of the Corpus Hermeticum. His early writings suggest a self-taught scholar with a particular interest in synthesizing disparate strands of esoteric knowledge into a cohesive system. One of his lesser-known influences was the occultist Pasquale de Servis, better known by his esoteric name Izar. De Servis was a prominent figure in the Italian esoteric milieu and contributed to Kremmerz's understanding of magic as a discipline grounded in metaphysical principles and practical efficacy. One of the aspects that we find in Kremmerz's work, which is also typical of other esotericists of his time, is the desire to combine esotericism with science, and in his case to align Hermetic thought with scientific inquiry. This effort was most evident in his writings on Hermetic medicine, where he presented the principles of alchemy and magic as complementary to emerging medical theories. In his seminal text La Scienza dei Magi from 1897, Kremmerz articulated a vision of magic as a rational and experimental science. Magic is not a superstition or blind belief, but an experimental science that studies the occult laws of nature. This framing positioned Kremmerz as a modernizer within the esoteric tradition, aligning with broader trends in late 19th century Western esotericism, which sought to reconcile spirituality and material science. Another key but often overlooked element of Kremmerz's thought was his emphasis on the therapeutic applications of magic. Healing for Kremmerz was both a spiritual and practical endeavor. His vision was deeply influenced by the Renaissance notion of Medicina Hermetica, or Hermetic medicine, which proposed that the body, soul, and cosmos were interconnected and that healing involved restoring harmony within this triadic relationship. He maintained that true Hermetic practice must serve the practical needs of humanity, particularly in alleviating suffering. His focus on healing was institutionalized in the Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam, which he founded in 1896. This esoteric order combined Hermetic teachings with practical rituals aimed at spiritual and physical well-being. Kremmerz's work was not without controversy. While his contributions to Italian Hermeticism have been lauded, critics have often accused him of diluting Hermetic principles by incorporating folk magic and therapeutic practices. This tension reflects broader debates within the Italian historic community during his time, as figures like Kremmerz sought to modernize and expand Hermetic teachings beyond their traditional confines. Despite these criticisms, his influence endured, and his writings remain a cornerstone of Italian historic literature. So, Giuliano Kremmerz represents a unique figure in the history of Italian Hermeticism. His life and work encapsulates the tension between tradition and modernity, mysticism and science, and esotericism and practicality. By synthesizing these elements, Kremmerz not only contributed to the Italian historic tradition, but also offered a model for how ancient wisdom could be adapted to address contemporary concerns. But this is just an appetizer, because we're going to get much deeper than that into Kremmerz's work and in the Fraternity of Myriam. But before we dive deeper into this learning adventure, I'd like to remind you that this project of delivering free scholarship on topics in esotericism can only exist thanks to your support. Yeah, you guys are my sponsor, so my fancy sponsor. So if you have the means and want to support my work, please consider doing so by joining my growing and fantastic Patreon community. We have monthly lectures, a Discord server, book club. We have lots of academic fun together, and I'm sure you will love it if you joined. Also, you can send me PayPal donations. Check out my services at drangelapuca.com. And you can get tutoring sessions, get my courses or individual lectures, and much more. So please check out the links that are in bio, description, info box, everywhere. And thank you so much for considering that. Also, please sign up for my newsletter. It's a free way to stay in contact with me and always be up to date with whatever I'm up to. And you won't have to rely on capricious social media algorithms that might or might not show you my work. So, for instance, there have been people who complained that it wasn't shown into their social media feed on time about the discount that I had on my Left Hand Path course, and they unfortunately missed out on that opportunity. But if you sign up for my newsletter, you will always be the first one to know about discounts and everything that I'm up to. So thank you so much for considering. And now let's move back to our topic. So let's talk about the Fraternity of Myriam, or La Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam in the original Italian, which was established by Giuliano Kremmerz in 1896. It occupies a central space in his legacy as a Hermeticist. This esoteric order, often abbreviated to the Myriam Fraternity, was both a practical and spiritual endeavor, embodying Kremmerz's vision of Hermeticism as a therapeutic science. Its name reflects its dual focus on healing, Terapeutica, and mystical transformation, Magica, with Miriam symbolizing a divine feminine principle drawn from Hermetic and Gnostic traditions. The order positioned itself as a continuation of ancient Hermetic schools, particularly those rooted in the Egyptian and Hellenistic traditions, while simultaneously addressing contemporary spiritual and physical needs. At the heart of the Myriam tradition was a commitment to healing, both as a spiritual process and as a practical art. Kremmerz framed healing as a Hermetic principle that aligned the microcosm, the individual, with the macrocosm, the universe. This concept was not new, drawing upon Renaissance Hermetic thought and earlier Neoplatonic and Gnostic traditions, but Kremmerz offered a distinct interpretation by emphasizing its accessibility and applicability to modern individuals. The magician is above all a healer. He understands the occult laws of nature and uses them to restore balance and harmony. This focus on healing distinguished Kremmerz from many of his contemporaries in the Western historic tradition, who often prioritized mystical speculation over practical application. The structure of the Myriam fraternity was intentionally hierarchical and initiatory. Kremmerz designed the order to guide participants through progressively deeper levels of understanding and practice. Members were classified into degrees, with each level revealing more advanced teachings. The initial stages focused on ethical discipline and basic Hermetic principles, while higher degrees involved complex rituals and therapeutic techniques. This initiatory framework echoed the structures of Renaissance Hermetic school and Western esoteric orders such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. However, this initiatory framework echoed the structures of Renaissance Hermetic schools and Western esoteric orders such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. However, Kremmerz's system was unique in its explicit integration of healing practices as a spiritual obligation for initiates. A central symbol within the Miriam tradition was the figure of Miriam herself. Kremmerz described her as an embodiment of the divine feminine and a guiding force for the order's activities. Scholars have debated the origins of this symbol, with some interpreting it as a reference to Mary Magdalene, who features prominently in Gnostic and mystical Christianity as a figure of wisdom and spiritual power. Others suggest a connection to the Egyptian goddess Isis, a central figure in Hermetic traditions and a symbol of esoteric knowledge and healing. The rituals and practices of the Miriam fraternity reflected its therapeutic focus. Members were instructed in the preparation and use of herbal remedies, the application of alchemical principles to healing, and the performance of meditative and ritual exercises designed to align their spiritual energies with cosmic forces. One of the fraternity's most notable practices was its use of fluido magico, magical fluid, a concept drawn from Renaissance alchemy and mesmerism. Kremmerz described this fluid as an invisible yet potent force that could be harnessed for healing and spiritual transformation. The magical fluid is the essence of life itself, the link between the material and the spiritual worlds. While Kremmerz emphasized the therapeutic effects of his work, the Miriam tradition also engaged with broader esoteric themes. The fraternity's teachings included alchemy, astrology, and mystical theology, drawing heavily on Hermetic texts such as the Corpus Hermeticum and the writings of Marsilio Ficino. Kremmerz viewed these disciplines as interconnected, each offering insights into the universal principles governing both spiritual and material realities. His integration of these elements positioned the Miriam tradition as a comprehensive Hermetic system, capable of addressing the full spectrum of human experience. Despite its ambitious scope and innovative approach, the Miriam fraternity faced criticism from both within and outside the esoteric community. Traditionalist Hermeticists accused Kremmerz of diluting Hermetic principles by incorporating elements of folk magic and modern scientific theories. Others criticized his emphasis on healing, arguing that it reduced the spiritual profundity of Hermeticism to a utilitarian practice. Kremmerz responded to these critiques by emphasizing the pragmatic and ethical dimensions of his work. True magic is not for the individual, but for humanity as a whole. Healing the body and spirit is the highest form of divine service. The Miriam tradition represents a unique synthesis of Hermetic philosophy, mystical practice, and therapeutic application. Through the Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam, Giuliano Kremmerz sought to revitalize ancient Hermetic principles for the modern world, offering a system that was both spiritually profound and practically relevant. While his work continues to be the subject of debate, its enduring influence on Italian Hermeticism and Western Esotericism underscores its significance as a distinctive contribution to the esoteric tradition. The philosophical framework of Giuliano Kremmerz and the Miriam tradition is deeply rooted in Hermetic cosmology, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of the universe, the self and the divine. Central to this worldview is the belief in the correspondence between the microcosm in the individual and the macrocosm, the cosmos. This principle, inherited from the Renaissance Hermetic tradition, serves as the foundation for the therapeutic and mystical practices within the Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam. Kremmerz sought to adapt these ancient principles to modern contexts, presenting them as not only mystical but also scientific in nature. At the core of Kremmerz's teachings is the triadic model of existence: the corpo, body, spirito, spirit, and anima, or soul. These three aspects of human existence correspond to the material, intermediary, and divine realms of the cosmos. In La Scienza dei Magi from 1897, Kremmerz described this triad as a reflection of cosmic harmony, where the body is connected to the earth, the spirit to the heavens, and the soul to God. The goal of Hermetic practice, according to Kremmerz, is to harmonize these three aspects, thereby aligning the individual with the universal order. One of the defining features of Kremmerz's philosophy is his emphasis on practical spirituality. Unlike many of his contemporaries who often prioritized mystical speculation, Kremmerz insisted that Hermetic knowledge must be applied to everyday life. This pragmatic orientation is most evident in his focus on healing, which he regarded as both a spiritual and ethical responsibility. Drawing on the Renaissance tradition of Medicina Ermetica, Kremmerz argued that healing is not merely a medical endeavor, but a sacred act that restores balance between the microcosm and the macrocosm. Every illness is the result of a disharmony between man and the universe. To heal is to restore this harmony. The divine feminine occupies a central role in Kremmerz's cosmology and the Miriam tradition. Miriam, the symbolic figurehead of the fraternity, represents the archetype of the divine feminine, encompassing wisdom, nurturing, and healing. Scholars have identified parallels between Miriam and figures such as Sophia in Gnosticism, Isis in Hermeticism, and Mary Magdalene in mystical Christianity. By elevating the divine feminine, Kremmerz not only honored the Hermetic tradition but also challenged the patriarchal structures that often dominated Western esotericism. Alchemy, a cornerstone of Hermetic thought, also plays a vital role in Kremmerz's teachings. However, his approach to alchemy is distinct in its focus on spiritual transformation rather than material transmutation. For Kremmerz, alchemy is a metaphor for the initiatory process, in which the practitioner undergoes an inner transformation akin to the alchemical stages of calcination, dissolution, and coagulation. In his writings, he often referred to this process as the opera magica, magical work, highlighting that it is both an individual and collective endeavor. Alchemy is not only the secret of matter, but the secret of the soul. It is the art of transforming the lead of our humanity into the gold of divinity. Another significant aspect of Kremmerz's philosophy is his reinterpretation of ritual. While rituals in traditional Hermeticism often serve as symbolic acts to align the practitioner with cosmic forces, Kremmerz imbued them with a distinctively therapeutic purpose. The rituals of the Miriam tradition are designed not only to invoke divine energies, but also to channel these energies into specific healing outcomes. For example, one of the fraternity's core practices involves the use of symboli fluidici, fluidic symbols, geometric patterns believed to concentrate and direct the flow of the fluido magico, the magical fluid. These symbols, combined with invocations and meditative practices, are used to address both physical and spiritual ailments. Kremmerz's work reflects a broader trend in the late 19th and early 20th century Western esotericism, which sought to reconcile mystical traditions with the emerging scientific paradigm. His writings frequently employ scientific language, describing Hermetic principles in terms of natural laws and empirical observation. This approach aligns him with contemporaries such as Helena Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner, who similarly sought to position esotericism as a legitimate field of knowledge alongside science. However, Kremmerz's focus on healing and practical application sets him apart, highlighting his unique contribution to the Hermetic tradition. Therefore, the philosophical underpinnings of the Miriam tradition reveal Giuliano Kremmerz's efforts to synthesize ancient Hermetic wisdom with modern spiritual and practical concerns. His emphasis on healing, the divine feminine, and spiritual transformation positions the tradition as a distinctive and enduring contribution to Italian Hermeticism and Western esotericism. By integrating these elements into a cohesive system, Kremmerz offered a model for how esoteric traditions can remain relevant and impactful in a changing world. Giuliano Kremmerz and the Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam occupied a controversial position within the landscape of Italian and Western esotericism. While Kremmerz is lauded by many as a reformer and innovator in the Hermetic tradition, his work was not without its detractors, both during his lifetime and after his death. Let's now explore the debates surrounding Kremmerz's teachings, his alleged deviation from traditional Hermeticism, and the enduring impact of his work on contemporary esoteric practices. One of the primary criticisms directed at Kremmerz was his incorporation of folk magic and healing practices into what was traditionally perceived as a high philosophical system. Critics within the Italian historic community, including some adherents of stricter Hermetic schools, accused Kremmerz of diluting Hermetic principles by integrating practices they viewed as superstitious or mundane. In particular, his emphasis on magia terapeutica, therapeutic magic, and the use of the fluido magico, magical fluid, were often dismissed as unorthodox by purists. In response to such criticisms, Kremmerz defended his work as a necessary evolution of Hermetic thought. He argued that the inclusion of therapeutic practices aligned with the original purposes of Hermeticism as a system for both spiritual enlightenment and practical benefit. This pragmatic perspective, which placed the well-being of individuals and society at the forefront, reflects Kremmerz's broader attempt to make Hermeticism accessible and applicable to modern life. Another point of contention was Kremmerz's relationship with contemporary science. While many Hermeticists of his time rejected modern scientific methodologies, Kremmerz actively sought to bridge the gap between esoteric traditions and empirical inquiry. His writings often employed the language of natural science, framing Hermetic principles as laws of nature that could be understood and harnessed through observation and experimentation. For instance, in La Scienza dei Magi, he likened the fluido magico to electromagnetic fields, proposing that it operated as a subtle energy permeating both the material and spiritual realms. This analogy drew criticism from traditionalists, who viewed it as an inappropriate conflation of mystical and scientific paradigms. Nevertheless, Kremmerz's approach anticipated later developments in esotericism, such as the integration of quantum theory and metaphysical concepts in the late 20th century. Kremmerz also faced challenges within his own organization. The Fratellanza Terapeutica Magica di Miriam experienced internal divisions, particularly after Kremmerz's death in 1930. Competing factions emerged, each claiming to represent the true continuation of his teachings. This fragmentation was exacerbated by the secretive nature of the fraternity, as much of its knowledge was transmitted orally or through private correspondence. Despite these controversies, Kremmerz's influence on Italian esotericism remains profound. His emphasis on therapeutic magic has inspired a number of contemporary spiritual healing practices, particularly in Italy, where the Miriam tradition continues to be studied and practiced. The fraternity itself, though fragmented, persists in various forms, with adherents seeking to preserve and expand upon Kremmerz's teachings. Moreover, his writings have gained renewed interest among scholars of Western esotericism, who recognize their importance in understanding the evolution of Hermetic thought in the modern era. One of Kremmerz's most enduring contributions is his synthesis of diverse esoteric traditions into a coherent and adaptable system. By drawing on Hermeticism, Gnosticism, folk magic, and emerging scientific paradigms, he created a framework that addressed both ancient philosophical questions and contemporary concerns. This synthesis is particularly evident in his conceptualization of Miriam, a figure who unites multiple archetypes of the divine feminine and serves as a focal point for the fraternity's rituals and practices. Kremmerz's legacy also extends beyond the confines of the Miriam tradition. His work has influenced broader currents in Western esotericism, particularly in the areas of alchemical healing, the divine feminine, and the interplay between mysticism and science. Scholars such as Antoine Fevre have highlighted Kremmerz as an example of how modern esotericism can serve as a bridge between traditional wisdom and contemporary thought. While his writings remain relatively obscure outside Italy, their significance is increasingly recognized by those interested in the intersections of Hermeticism, spirituality, and modernity. Thus, the controversies surrounding Giuliano Kremmerz and the Miriam tradition reflect the dynamic tensions inherent in the evolution of esoteric thought. While his work was often criticized for its departures from traditional Hermeticism, it also represents a bold attempt to revitalize and adapt ancient principles for a modern audience. Kremmerz's emphasis on healing, his engagement with science, and his synthesis of diverse traditions have ensured his place as a key figure in Italian and Western esotericism. His legacy, though complex and contested, continues to inspire both practitioners and scholars, offering a rich field for further exploration and dialogue. Now, let's look at the primary sources and texts of Giuliano Kremmerz. The writings of Giuliano Kremmerz, though not voluminous, constitute the cornerstone of the Miriam tradition and offer profound insights into his Hermetic philosophy. These texts are marked by a unique synthesis of Hermetic principles, practical magic, and therapeutic applications, often articulated in a language that bridges mystical and scientific discourses. However, Kremmerz's reliance on private correspondence and limited circulation publications has rendered much of his work less accessible to broader audiences, further enhancing its mystique within the esoteric tradition. One of Kremmerz's most important works is La Scienza dei Magi, The Science of the Magi, first published in 1897. This text serves as both an introduction to his Hermetic worldview and a practical manual for aspiring initiates of the Miriam tradition. In it, Kremmerz outlines the philosophical underpinnings of his teachings, emphasizing the interconnectedness of the material and spiritual realms. The book is structured as a didactic treatise, with sections dedicated to topics such as the triadic model of existence, body, soul, and spirit, the principles of Hermetic healing, and the ethical responsibilities of the Hermetic practitioner. It describes magic as an experimental science whose aim is the understanding of the secret laws of the universe. This framing reflects Kremmerz's broader attempt to position Hermeticism as a rational and empirical discipline, in contrast to the more speculative approaches often associated with Western esotericism. Another key text is La Medicina Ermetica, Hermetic Medicine, published in 1901. This work focuses specifically on the therapeutic dimensions of Hermeticism, presenting a detailed exploration of the relationship between spiritual and physical health. Kremmerz argues that illness arises from an imbalance within the individual's energetic and spiritual constitution, which can be corrected through Hermetic practices. The book includes instructions for the preparation of herbal remedies, the application of alchemical principles to healing, and the use of rituals to channel the fluido magico. Kremmerz also discusses the role of the healer as a mediator between cosmic forces and the patient, describing healing as a divine art that requires wisdom, compassion, and knowledge. On this note, I'd like to remind you that on Sunday, 19th of January at 4 p.m. UK time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have a Magus lecture for my Magus tier patrons on the Hermetic Science of Transformation by Giuliano Kremmerz. So sign up to my Patreon at a Magus or higher tier patron to access that, access our community, and also a database of, at this point, over 60 past lectures. So I hope to see you there. I'm sure that you're going to love it, and thank you for considering. In addition to his books, Kremmerz contributed to several esoteric periodicals, most notably Il Mondo Secreto, The Secret Word. This magazine, which he founded and edited, served as a platform for disseminating Hermetic teachings to a broader audience. Its articles covered a wide range of topics, from astrology and alchemy to the mystical significance of numbers and symbols. The periodical also included contributions from other members of the Miriam fraternity, reflecting the collaborative nature of the order's intellectual and spiritual work. Il Mondo Secreto remains a valuable resource for understanding the practical and philosophical concerns of the Miriam tradition, though its limited print run has made original copies rare and highly sought after by collectors and scholars. Kremmerz's unpublished correspondence provides another vital source of insight into his teachings and the inner workings of the Miriam fraternity. These letters, many of which are preserved in private archives, reveal a more personal and informal side of his philosophy. The dissemination of Kremmerz's writings was intentionally selective, reflecting his belief that Hermetic knowledge should be reserved for those who demonstrated both intellectual curiosity and ethical integrity. This exclusivity has contributed to the mystique surrounding his work, as well as its enduring appeal among contemporary esoteric practitioners. However, it has also posed challenges for scholars seeking to analyze his teachings in a comprehensive manner. The relative scarcity of his published text and the secretive nature of the fraternity's practices have limited the availability of primary source material, requiring researchers to rely heavily on secondary accounts and archival research. In recent years, efforts have been made to preserve and digitalize Kremmerz's writings, ensuring their accessibility for future generations. Italian scholars and publishers have played a key role in this process, producing critical editions of his major works and anthologies of his correspondence. These initiatives have not only enriched the academic study of Kremmerz, but also fostered a renewed interest in his contributions to Hermeticism and Western esotericism. And these are some of the references that you will also find in the description box. And this is it for today's video. If you watched until this point, leave me a pen emoji. Now, my dear symposiasts, this project of delivering free scholarly knowledge on all things esoteric can only exist thanks to you. So if you have the means and want to keep this project alive, please consider supporting it via PayPal donations by joining my fantastic and growing Patreon community, super thanking me in the comments, checking out my services at drangelafuca.com, and you find all the links in the description, in bio, in the cards, everywhere. Thank you so much for considering. And also don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. It's free and will keep you up to date with everything that I'm up to. And if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's really important to me. Just go on and subscribe. Share this video around and all of the videos that you love around. It really helps me out and helps the symposium grow. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this episode. Were you familiar with Kremmerz? Were you familiar with Hermetic healing and his whole system? I'm very curious to know how known he is outside of Italy, because he's very famous in Italy, in esoteric circles, but I'm not totally sure how known he is outside of Italy. Probably not very much, but you guys can tell me. I look forward to reading your comments. Also, activate the notification bell so that you will never miss an upload from me, because YouTube might decide not to show my new video in your feeds. And thank you so much for being here up until this point with me. You're very committed to your learning. It's fantastic. So thank you again, and I hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now. Today we hold